We have some breaking news coming out here. The Las Vegas Raiders have signed an absolute monster linebacker and Germaine Pratt, a guy who I think would easily be a Las Vegas Raiders starting linebacker. A guy that I think is arguably one of the better linebackers in the NFL. And I'm very, very excited that the Raiders have brought in Pratt. He was just released by the Cincinnati Bengals about 2 days back. He was released more so, in my opinion, because of the cap casualties that the Cincinnati Bengals have kind of going on. They have multiple players that are kind of holding out. They've already, essentially paid two of the best wide receivers in the NFL. They have one of the highest paid quarterbacks. Bengals just don't have money right now, and they're obviously in contract disputes with two of their defensive players. One of the guys is a rookie defensive lineman. The other, of course, is the other defensive end, one of the best defensive ends, Trey Hendrickson. But that kind of led to the Bengals having to make these tough decisions, and they released Germaine Pratt, and I think Pratt's a really, 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 really good linebacker. And I think the Raiders got themselves an absolute deal. So Jordan Schultz was the first that put it out there. He said that former Bengals linebacker Germaine Pratt is signing a 1-year contract worth up to $4.78 million with the Las Vegas Raiders. Pratt started all 17 games last season and is coming off a career-high 143 tackles to go along with 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. Pratt, to me, the tape kind of speaks for itself. He's a guy that's a very, very good linebacker. He's a downhill linebacker. He's physical. He's 6'3", 240 pounds. And even last year, the guy still moved really, really, really well. Right? This is not a Devin White type of situation. And I hate using Devin White because he's obviously with the Raiders at this point. But, Devin White over the past 2 years hasn't been all that good. Right? He's definitely slowing down a lot. He's not as quick. He's not as fluid. Germaine Pratt's kind of on the opposite side of that, right? Now, they both came out, I believe, in the same exact draft class. Pratt is a little bit older, but Devin White's played a lot more, and I think he just kind of broke down a little bit quicker. But I think Pratt's one of those guys that'll end up starting for the Raiders. Right now, the reports coming out of camp is that Landon Roberts is going to be one of the Raiders starting linebackers. I'm pretty sure at this point, Germaine Pratt will probably be the other starting linebacker. And of course, I think Devin White, as well as even a guy like Amari Gainer, pretty sure both these guys will kind of rotate in. But I love bringing in Pratt, not only because he's a good football player, but he has similar size, right? A very, very similar size profile to a guy like Amari Gainer. So I think Gainer could learn a lot from Pratt. And it also kind of takes you to the broader point. If the Raiders have now, went through all the OTAs, they're at the point now where minicamp has officially started, right? Today was day 2 of minicamp. The fact that they've realized that, hey, we need to go out there and then potentially bring another linebacker in, potentially bring some other guys in, kind of tells you how the Raiders think of this roster, right? They're not super high on the linebackers. That's at least what I get, right? The fact that they went out and signed Pratt. But also do understand, if Pratt did not get released from the Bengals, there's also a chance the Raiders would have never signed a linebacker. And they would have been okay with the group that they kind of have. But Germaine Pratt is coming in. You guys can also see some of this guy's stats. Last season, he had 10 total pressures. He had 5 quarterback hits. The guy did have well over 100 tackles, right? 107 total tackles according to Pro Football Focus. He did also have 2 interceptions. He got his hands on the ball 2 other times as well, right? A couple of pass breakups. The guy's really, really, really solid. And I'd even make the argument when it comes to pass coverage, the guy's pretty good. Some people will overlook a linebacker like Germaine Pratt because he's not one of those guys that's generally known as a cover linebacker, right? You look around the NFL, Shaq Thompson's a great example of this. This is a guy that did it for many, many, many years. And he was always known as a guy that's kind of that coverage guy, right? Fred Warner is, although he's an all-around linebacker, in the NFL, teams look at that guy like he's one of the elite cover guys. Although Pratt's not necessarily known for that coverage ability, he is a good linebacker when it comes to coverage. He's very smart. He can force those turnovers. The guy has 8 career interceptions, which is pretty good for linebackers, especially in today's era of the NFL. I'm excited for the pickup, man. I really do think Germaine Pratt changes the Raiders defense. And I do think the Raiders will continue to get better, and they'll continue to swap out players if that needs to happen. In fact, the Raiders actually brought in another free agent. This time, those free agent cornerbacks, Shaquille Griffin, who is visiting the Raiders. This is according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. He said the former Pro Bowler also visited Seattle earlier in the offseason. So Shaquille Griffin, obviously it's a guy that has those connections to the Raiders' current regime. He's another guy that was, in the past had so much potential, so much upside. People thought he's a top 10 cornerback. at least at some point. He made the Pro Bowl, and it's never really panned out for him, right? Like, for example, you can look at a guy like Derek Stingley, right? Derek Stingley, top 5 pick. Early on in the process, the guy looked really, really good, and he only got better and better and better. And I think now he's probably the best cornerback in the NFL. Shaquille Griffin was kind of on a similar trajectory, but it never really worked out for this guy, right? He kind of fell off a little bit, and maybe I shouldn't use those words, but again, the Raiders need that help in the secondary, and do keep in mind our roster is full. So signing Germaine Pratt means we will be releasing someone here over the next couple days. If we do sign Shaquille Griffin, who's in for a visit, we'll have to release someone else as well. And generally speaking, when you sign a linebacker, you're releasing a linebacker. When you sign a corner, you're releasing a corner. So we'll see who ends up kind of getting the boot if we end up bringing in Griffin. But we will get at least one guy cut at this point. Of course, that is unless the Raiders put someone on some sort of season-ending injury report, which would be really, really unfortunate. But Shaquille Griffin's another guy that I think could definitely benefit the Las Vegas Raiders. Our cornerback room, it's not great, right? We don't really know which guys are going to end up starting and which guys will end up playing. We know that right now Darian Porter is one of the guys that's getting a really, really good look from the Raiders. Eric Stokes is supposed to be the other starting corner. But I'm going to be honest, guys, I'm not even 100% sold on those two guys because Eric Stokes, Packers fans didn't want that guy, right? Darian Porter hasn't been a corner all that long. He didn't have the most success as a corner. Although in zone coverage, he was really, really, really good. But, it's just one of those things where there's a lot of unproven guys right now on this team, right? Even the linebackers, you look at Landon Roberts, look at Devin White. Devin White hasn't been that good for the past 2 years. You look at Landon Roberts, he's 30, 31 years old. He's older than Robert Spillane as well at this point, right? So I do think the Raiders should continue to add as we kind of go forward. There are a couple of updates that are coming out of the Las Vegas Raiders minicamp from today, right? Today was day 2, and I do want to also kind of talk about that. I think the Raiders are in a really, really, really good spot. Not only do we actually have a quarterback that I personally have faith in and personally trust to be a good quarterback, but the guy's actually having success right now in minicamp. They're out there running 11-on-11 drills. They're out there, practicing some of the plays that they've essentially are going to be, going to when the actual season comes around. Levi Edwards puts it out there that Geno Smith's accuracy continues to shine. This time, he found Michael Mayer open for a touchdown after splitting 2 safeties on a seam route. This is interesting because when you run certain routes, sometimes you have guys that are influence routes. Trey Tucker, Dante Thornton, oftentimes these guys are going to run deep just to run deep to potentially open things up underneath. And I'm not saying Michael Mayer was an influence guy and the ball maybe should have, went to someone else, or maybe it was designed to go to someone else. But NFL quarterbacks, generally speaking, when a play is designed where you have a guy that's running an influence route, quarterbacks aren't throwing that pass downfield, right? The guy is there just to split 2 safeties, get the attention of 2 guys to open things up underneath. But the thing with Geno Smith is Geno Smith's known to not really give a crap, right? He's the type to put the ball between 2 safeties to a guy that's running an influence route, right? So if Michael Mayer was running an influence route and Geno Smith's hitting him for a touchdown, I wouldn't be surprised if that's happening. And I'm not saying that's happening, but that's just my general opinion of watching Geno Smith. This guy, he's one of those guys that's going to push the ball downfield. The Raiders will have drives this year where within 3 plays, we're going to score a touchdown. Geno Smith's going to hit someone for 30 yards. Ashton Jeanty's going to run it for 20. Geno's going to hit another guy for 30 yards. It's going to be a touchdown. Right? 3 plays just like that, the Raiders are scoring touchdowns. That's going to happen for us this year. Right? Geno Smith's a really, really, really good quarterback. He does push the ball downfield. Now, he did have more turnover issues more recently. Even in practice, he's thrown a couple of interceptions, which we'll get into here in a second. But Geno Smith's looked really, really good over the past, and I think as he comes to the Raiders will be able to kind of have success. And I do hope Michael Mayer is able to turn it around. The reports right now coming out of camp is that Michael Mayer has looked really, really good between minicamp and even OTAs. He's a guy that's been kind of shining. I read a report from one of the Raiders reporters that the guy that shined the most to him has been Michael Mayer, and he thinks Michael Mayer is going to surprise a lot of people. He also put it out there. He thinks Tyree Wilson's another guy that'll surprise some people this year. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But I love hearing that Geno Smith is connecting with Michael Mayer, catching it essentially, close to two safety. He's splitting between two safeties. We have another one here. Good physical pass breakup by Jeremy Chin on Jakobi Meyers. That's a big safety bringing the energy in minicamp. I love the reports that are coming out of camp with Jeremy Chin. I talked about this in yesterday's video, so I won't touch too much on it, but Jeremy Chin played in a very, very similar scheme. It was the Dan Quinn scheme, which is going to be very similar to what the Raiders are going to run this season. Right? Dan Quinn was a coach under Pete Carroll years back, right? He'd learned under Pete Carroll, and Dan Quinn continued that cover 3 scheme that Pete Carroll was kind of known for. That's not always the case with every single coordinator, right? Robert Saleh, as an example, did not continue that cover 3 scheme that Pete Carroll, really went to. And Saleh obviously was under Pete Carroll at some point as well. There's other coaches around the NFL that were under Pete Carroll that they never went back to that same scheme, right? But Dan Quinn was one of the guys that stuck to that scheme. And Jeremy Chin had his best year last year under Dan Quinn, being utilized as kind of like that Swiss Army knife type of player, right? It's a guy that lines up on the line of scrimmage. He drops back. He'll blitz. He'll line up as a linebacker. He'll blitz. He'll drop back. He's a guy that can line up as a split safety, as a post safety as well, potentially, right? Jeremy Chin can do it all. And I'm really, really excited that he's with the Raiders this year. I think his best football is going to be this year and probably the year after and the year after that. Like, he'll have, from last year, he'll probably have 3 or 4 good years, right? And 1 year was obviously last year. I think he'll have 2 or 3 really good years as we kind of go forward. And the scheme fits him well, right? And he's expected to be one of the Raiders starters. So, really happy that he's able to make some plays, but he's been kind of doing this all of minicamp. He's even had some interceptions as well. So, really solid job by him. Ryan McFadden put some notes out there from the Raiders minicamp. Obviously, we already know this, but he's saying that Darian Porter and Eric Stokes continue to get the bulk of the first team reps at the cornerback position. He also put it out there. Geno Smith threw a pair of touchdown passes to Michael Mayer and Jakobi Meyers, but he was intercepted by Darnay Holmes after the ball was tipped. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then, of course, Dante Thornton dropped the touchdown catch. He and Trey Tucker have been lining up on the outside while Jakobi Meyers is in the slot. So that is a really, really, really interesting point right there. Dante Thornton, the drop is one thing, right? Multiple people have kind of said this. He got behind coverage apparently, and I haven't spoken to the guy that I speak to, but apparently he got behind coverage and he was wide open. He burned whoever he was going up against, and he dropped the touchdown. It should have been a touchdown. Not a huge deal, but I love the fact that he's burning people and he's able to, potentially score a touchdown. And then, of course, I love the fact that he's being hit in stride, right? Thornton is running with the first team offense at the moment. So that's a huge, huge, huge benefit for the Raiders right now. Thornton's flashing, right? And then, of course, both him and Trey Tucker have been lining up on the outside while Jakobi Meyers has been in the slot. This kind of just tells you the role for these guys. I think both Dante Thornton and Trey Tucker will be outside wide receivers primarily. And, of course, I think Jakobi Meyers and then even Jack Bech will be lining up in the slot. Now, you can make the argument Jakobi Meyers is our best wide receiver. And the fact that he's in the slot means that Jack Bech, who obviously was picked for Thornton, the fact that Jack Bech's role is also as a slot player, to me, it just means that Jakobi Meyers is going to start and Jack Bech is going to have to run with the twos. And then in terms of the other role, which is the outside wide receiver, I don't think Trey Tucker's necessarily beaten out Dante Thornton yet. I think that's going to kind of be a battle between the two guys. And I wouldn't be surprised if Thornton ends up beating him out. But the fact that he plays on the outside and then Jakobi Meyers plays on the inside also means that Thornton could start for the Raiders this year, while Jack Bech ends up kind of coming off the bench and maybe he doesn't get as many snaps as Thornton. Doesn't mean Thornton will be better. It just means Thornton's role is actually open while Jack Bech's role is not open, right? So I hope that makes sense. Also, just another thing to kind of note, we've already talked about this, but I think this also kind of confirms that Jack Bech is the Jakobi Meyers replacement, right? Not saying that the Raiders won't necessarily re-sign Jakobi Meyers, but I do think if Jack Bech can give you like 80% of what Jakobi Meyers does as soon as this season, he might not have the targets, but if he can do like 80% of what Jakobi Meyers does as soon as this season, I think Jakobi Meyers won't be here next year, right? And then with that, we'll also see kind of like where Jack Bech is in terms of development. But I really like some of what we're hearing. I did speak to the guy yesterday specifically. I haven't spoken to him about practice today, but the guy that I speak to at OTAs, when I spoke to him yesterday, he did talk about Thornton. He said Thornton's looked really, really, really good. He also mentioned Brock Bowers looking good, Ashton, jeanty. Although with the run game, I take that with a grain of salt because, you're not going full pads or full speed if you're the offensive and defensive line. So it is kind of hard, but he did say that Ashton Jeanty's been kind of being lined up all over the place. So there's a lot of really, really good things that are kind of coming out. Let's wrap this video up talking about some of the interceptions. If you guys don't know this, Maxx Crosby jumped a Geno Smith pass. And this was a throw into the flats, and Maxx Crosby apparently had a pick six. And then Maxx Crosby threw the ball over the fence in celebration as the entire defense joined him in the end zone. They're actually practicing this yesterday. This was something that the guy that I speak to actually told me. He says, hey, one of the things that I had noticed that I didn't see necessarily in the past was the edge players were actually simulating pressure and then they were jumping into the flats. So if you guys don't know what that means, basically if you have 4 defensive linemen, you have 5 offensive linemen, all 5 of those offensive linemen know which guy they're going to block, which guy they're responsible for, right? And then the 5th offensive lineman that does not have a guy in front of him, he'll be tagged with one of the linebackers. If a safety's potentially showing, they'll tag him with that guy. But basically the 5 offensive linemen know which 5 guys they're going to pick up, right? And then what the Raiders were practicing was they're practicing simulated pressure. So Maxx Crosby was taking one step forward and then he was dropping in coverage. And it wasn't just Maxx, right? Malcolm was doing it. Tyree was doing it. Some of the other edge guys were doing it as well, right? Snowden and Carter and all the other guys. And what he was saying was they're basically simulating pressure. So Maxx Crosby's going to drop off and then a linebacker blitzes, or 2 linebackers blitz. And because an offensive tackle is out there on Maxx Crosby, and even though Maxx is falling off, by the time that offensive tackle realizes it and he looks back to find those linebackers are already in the backfield. Or they're already getting to your quarterback. Now with that, when teams blitz as a quarterback, right? If Ashton Jeanty's running a route to the left and both linebackers blitz, I understand that, hey, one of those guys is responsible for this guy. So you see 2 guys coming, you quickly check it out there, right? That's just something quarterbacks are taught. Essentially, the Raiders baited Geno Smith. That's what I'm getting from this, right? They're simulating pressure. So the fact that Maxx Crosby simulated pressure, Geno Smith read the blitz. He looked like, I'm going to quickly get the ball out to Ashton Jeanty. The Raiders essentially baited Geno Smith into that interception. That, to me, is something I really, really, really like. And I'm not surprised that the Raiders, we did this last year a little bit as well. Patrick Graham, although he didn't simulate pressure as much, he did blitz his linebackers a lot, right? And the benefit of a simulated pressure is you're still rushing forward, but you're just using the offensive line's pass protection rules against them, right? So the fact that the Raiders were practicing this yesterday and then they actually utilized it today and Maxx Crosby got an interception is a really, really, really good thing, right? Something you definitely want to hear. Shout out to Maxx Crosby for that. And then, of course, we'll wrap it up with some more interception news. Darnay Holmes got his 2nd pick of the day. This time it was against Aiden O'Connell. So Darnay Holmes, the guy that we spoke about, has 2 interceptions today in practice. And this is a guy that could actually be a starter for the Raiders this season. And I wanted to kind of talk about Holmes a little bit. So I believe the first interception was against Geno Smith, but don't quote me on that. I have not spoken to the guy about today's practice specifically. But I believe the first interception Darnay Holmes got was against Geno Smith. And then the second one was against Aiden O'Connell. But do keep in mind, this guy's taking first-team reps for the Raiders. Darnay Holmes has played slot cornerback for the Raiders in nickel packages. Now, from my understanding, he's also rotated in at safety. It may have been Thomas Harper that's rotated in that safety and slot. So maybe this guy's a pure slot guy. But from my understanding, he is playing for the Raiders, the first-team unit. Now, it might not be 100% of snaps, right? I believe they also do throw in Thomas Harper as a safety, and then Isaiah Paul now goes down into the slot position. So the Raiders are utilizing different packages right now, but Darnay Holmes, Thomas Harper are 2 guys to keep an eye on this season, right? They're going to be 2 guys that might actually get an extended look for the Raiders. Right now, Darnay Holmes is probably ahead of Jacorian Bennett. And I know Bennett had the injury, he had the surgery, and maybe that's the reason why he's not getting that same look that we had seen him get over the last couple of years. But Darnay Holmes right now is probably ahead of Ja'Cory Bennett. And that may not stick as, the offseason continues. Bennett might end up starting. But my understanding is Darnay Holmes is getting a lot more looks with the number 1 unit than Ja'Cory Bennett is. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. But I do love the fact that this guy's getting some interceptions. And I love hearing that, Maxx Crosby is getting this interception and they're having a simulated pressure. I love hearing that Darnay Holmes is jumping plays or Jeremy Chin is getting some pass breakups because it is practice, right? So, when Geno Smith's throwing interceptions, we shouldn't worry about that because it is practice, right? The offense has, they're at a disadvantage compared to the defense because the offense has, all this new language, right? Cover 1 is cover 1. Cover 3 is cover 3. None of that changes. The rules don't generally change. A lot of that stuff is the same stuff. So the defense will be a lot further ahead than the offense. Plus, it's practice. So Geno Smith's just trying to see which guys he can throw those 50-50 passes up to. If it works in practice, it'll work in game. So he'll know which guys to go to during the actual game. So, just kind of keep that in mind. But I do love the fact that the Raiders defense is having some success right now. I, once again, do think the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be good this year, man. I really, really, really do think they're going to be good. There's some other videos that have also come out of minicamp. I'm not going to get into those in the video today, but I will break down some of those videos maybe tomorrow. Maybe I'll do another video later on today. But let me know what you guys think, man. What are you guys' thoughts on the Las Vegas Raiders right now? This team, kind of some of these reports that we're hearing. Let me know in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.